one of the terms that in Zen and in Mahayana Tibetan they talk about is of groundlessness, which is interesting because I'm talking about the ground that you're sitting on is the ground of the difficulty, is the ground of whatever you are observing, whether it is happy or sad, whether it's joyful or painful. That's your cushion. And yet, by practicing more deeply, the teachings refer to what's called the groundlessness of your practice. What we're talking about is that the groundlessness of the ego and the sense of self. Because you're no longer observing the phenomena that's difficult as me and mine. So your possessiveness of your difficulty has lost ground. It has nowhere to settle. The groundlessness means like my sense of ego, my selfishness, my self-centeredness has lost its ground, has lost its stability. The surety I have in me, myself, and mine, that has, been shaken. But that doesn't leave me insecure, however, because I know where I'm sitting and I know what I'm doing. I'm sitting here in this place. I'm more focused on what's happening and not on why is it happening to me. So compassion brings the attention to what's happening here and now, and not to the I and the me who wants to identify with it and create either a strong and good and happy sense of self or a miserable one. So by observing closely to your moment, the ground that yourself is resting on weakens. But the ground that your awareness is sitting on becomes solid. We call it the mountain seat. So by taking your mountain seat, and Zen is taking the mountain seat, you take your mountain seat, stable, secure, still. Then whatever weather system comes your way, you can sit with it. And mountain weather systems are very unstable and changeable. But the mountain remains, though it may be completely covered by cloud or open to the sun. We usually think, though, that we need really certain favorable conditions to cultivate our compassionate, mindful awareness. Well, the main condition that we're given in this life is dukkha. That is the main condition. Otherwise, you wouldn't need to practice. But because there is dukkha, there is practice. All right. So the favorable conditions are already here with us. That's what I'm saying. Your practice has what it needs. So I don't want to make this too too high a practice, because the gentleness, we have to remember, when we talk about groundlessness, it's easy to think that I'm having this sense of this experience of emptiness. No. Groundlessness means that I'm just a little less focused on me and more aware of this. I want to simplify it. I want to make it clear. When we're talking about groundlessness, it means that my ego is not so front and center in the way I'm looking around, and it's not always interpreted as to what is good or bad for me. The groundlessness is simply that the ego and the sense of self has quieted. It's become more quiet, a little less demanding, a little more open and responsive, not reactive. That's groundlessness. I don't want to make it obscure and unreachable, because it is. It's available moment by moment. Being able to let go and let in. And then you have to do it all over again, because you find the habits of the self are very strong. You suddenly like react with, the old habitual, all the old, favorites. But if you spend 90 seconds really observing clearly the nature of your body and mind and of your present experience, you'll find yourself seated securely in the midst of the difficulty with a little more clarity. But don't expect that clarity or be attached to it, because then it becomes another sense of self. Like, I am clear. I understand. That's not what we're looking for. I want to read a short poem with you, with us, for us. One of my favorites by Czesław Miłosz, the Polish poet. And it's called Love. Love means to learn to look at yourself the way one looks at distant things. For you are only one thing among many. And whoever sees that way heals his heart without knowing it from various ills. A bird and a tree say to him, friend. Then he wants to use himself and things so that they stand in the glow of ripeness. It doesn't matter whether he knows what he serves. Who serves best doesn't always understand. When we have difficulties, if we were to hear those difficulties and to see them as if a friend came to us, told us what we're feeling and experiencing, and we sat and we listened to that friend, you would care, and you would probably see and hear them a little more clearly than you see and hear yourself. That's what he means look at yourself a little bit like distant things. It doesn't need to be so distant, like in, Zimbabwe or something. It can just be like a friend came to visit and told you of a problem he's having, and you listened, and that was enough. You didn't solve his problem, and that's not actually what he wanted. He just wanted to be heard and seen and cared for. And in that way, of that being present and listening without needing to react or solve the problem, without needing to change the reality or give good advice. In that way, the world can look at us and say, friend. And you don't need to understand that process, because the process of presence, of being with, has its own magic and healing power. Is it a prescription we can write? No. But it's that desire that everything will become ripe. That ripeness he spoke of is the wish that all beings will realize their true Buddha nature. In Buddhist talk, may all beings realize full enlightenment. Miwash says, so that they stand in the glow of ripeness. The true ripeness of this fruit is a full realization of your own nature. So just two more things I'd like to share, if I may, and then if anyone has a question. There's a koan I always bring up when talking about compassion. It's about Canon, Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, with all the eyes and hands that reach out to, see all sentient beings and hear them and reach out and help them. And that's the image of the Bodhisattva of compassion. So many ways to help, so many different ways. So the koan, and it's actually in Dogen's Shobogenzo that he wrote and quoted. The hands and eyes of great compassion. Yunnan asked Dewa, how does the Bodhisattva of great compassion, Canon, use so many hands and eyes? Like, how does she practice? Dewa said, it's just like a person in the middle of the night, reaching back in search of the pillow and adjusting the pillow. You should be thinking, what? It's like a person in the middle of the night adjusting his pillow. Yunnan said, I understand. Which is the wrong thing to say. You understand what? If someone tells you a koan, don't say I understand. Just don't do it. So Dao, of course, asked him, how do you understand it? Yunnan said, all over the body are hands and eyes. The whole body is hands and eyes. That's how he understands it. And Dao says, what you said is all you see, Yunnan, when he said all over the body are hands and eyes, he was coming up with an image in his mind. It was a nice image and it was beautiful. And it was a mental image. But that image will fade and that image will pass and he'll be left untouched and unchanged. Too much dependence on a certain type of understanding and not on he who serves best doesn't always understand. So then, Yunnan says, that's what I'm like. How do you understand it? And Deva says, all over the body are hands and eyes. Deva says the same thing that Yunnan says. So why was Yunnan wrong and Deva was correct? Why did Yunnan get 80% but Deva the whole thing? What is that pillow? That gentle gesture in the middle of the night. When it's dark and you don't see anything. You're barely awake, but you're awake just enough to make a small adjustment. Compassion is not big and compassion is not small. It is what it is related to this moment. It's not an idea. It may start as an idea, but it's a perception. It's a perception. It's the way we perceive reality as connected deeply to us and we to it. So that tree and grass and sky say friend. It's not trying to prove anything or get the right answer. But it's understanding we're here to serve, and by serving others, we're serving ourselves. That's true compassion. That it's not a win or lose relationship. It's we're in this together. And if there's pain on some level, it's my pain. And if that pain still exists, then on some level, I too suffer. And yes, that may just be a teaching now for most of us. And it may just be an idea. But this is the ground we sit on, is that we start with our own difficulty, our own fear, pain, anxiety, our own expectations and disappointments, our own sadness and grief, our own regrets, our own excitements and attachments and desires. That is the fertile ground that will ripen your fruit. When you can have the perspective of compassion, which views all things, all states, and all dukkha as your cushion, and that you adjust that pillow in the middle of the night. then the ground starts to give under our feet. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, he called this state the fundamental ambiguity of being human. The fundamental ambiguity of being human, or uncertainty or insecurity of being human. No matter what, as a self, we're not going to be good enough. But that ambiguity, that uncertainty, that in Zen terms, that great doubt is a pillar of your practice. And it's fundamental. It's basic to being human. Is that you will always be, on some level, uncertain of what to do. And that uncertainty will open up a certain care. What is that uncertainty? In a beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. And in the expert's mind, few. That's the uncertainty. That uncertainty, that fundamental ambiguity of being human is called beginner's mind. And I'll finish with what Suzuki Roshi says about it. In the beginner's mind, there is no thought, I have achieved something. All self-centered thoughts limit our vast mind. When we have no thought of achievement, no thought of self, we are true beginners. Then we can really learn something. The beginner's mind is the mind of compassion. When our mind is compassionate, it is boundless. As Dogen Zenji said, the founder of our school, he always emphasized how important it is to remember our boundless original mind. Then we are always true to ourselves, in sympathy with all beings, and can actually practice. So may we realize this together on this great way and this great time and this great opportunity that we have being alive in this moment. So you share or ask? It's a good time.
I have a question. How can compassion be cultivated as practice when it feels really external or foreign, and like the sense of self is so powerful and so seems so important?
Yeah, that's a real common sense question that should be on our mind. Buddha nature and awakened mind seems such a great teaching and so unrealistic. Well, giving up's not an option. So that's one good thing. We don't go from, self-centered mind to Buddha mind. We slowly reinforce again and again, like those 90-second, observations. We reinforce the perception of selflessness. What does that mean? It means that when you notice like the selfishness and the fear and the anxiety, you observe it. But in addition to that, we cultivate certain perceptions towards, and when I say perception, I mean, how do you perceive this? It's not just physical, it's also attitudinal. Your perception is also your attitude towards things. And though the attitude initially, the reactive attitude, may be self-centered and selfish, like, why am I stuck here? Or what are these people doing? Or, this is an obstacle, or why me, or whatever, I don't want to feel this. It's reactive. The reactivity is just the first stage of awareness. There's observing the reactivity, observing the state of mind and the body that comes up. Reinforcing some of the Dharma attitudes then in response to that. Right? Yeah, it is actually a technical practice initially that we're reinforcing in the same way that, we sit and we follow breath. Like, how can I follow breath? I keep losing it. Oh yeah. Then you come back and you notice that you've been lost in your daydreams for half an hour or 25 minutes. You got 5 minutes left. You're going to follow your breath now. Does that mean the practice was wasted for 25 minutes? No. It just means you now are back. But if you didn't sit for all that time you were daydreaming, you wouldn't even have come back. So the point here is not how much we're selfish, but how much we can invite an unselfish attitude, even in a rote and mechanical way, more often in our mind. So that when we start to feel blocked by others, we start to say, look at them the way I look at myself. Like, they're probably suffering too. How are they suffering? Instead of the focus just on how am I suffering, we start to observe others as we observe self, and we start to observe self as I observe others. And that's an attitudinal shift. That's a perception that I start to choose more. Is it a magic wand that gets rid of my selfishness? No. But as I said, all these things are what's called a practice, meaning I do it over and over and over, like a musical instrument. If just because I know what like Bach sounds like, doesn't mean when I start piano, I'm going to start playing like that after 2 months. What happened? I've been working for 2 months or 2 years or 10 years. Why am I not playing? I guess I need more practice. It's a good thing musicians don't stop when they get frustrated. Otherwise, there'd be very little good music in the world. But we tend to get, kind of disillusioned because the self seems so strong. And after all this time, I haven't like chipped away enough at it. So I guess there's more practice to do, and it may take more than this lifetime. But we do it moment by moment. We chip away at the calcified defensiveness around my ego, so that the vulnerability doesn't mean I don't feel the pain, but that I can fully acknowledge the pain. That's what happens when I chip through the defenses. It's not that the pain disappears, it's that I can fully accept it now, instead of struggling against this idea that I should be, pain-free. And remember, pain and suffering are not the same thing. If you're alive, you're going to have pain. The identification with it as me and mine turns it into suffering and makes a self and a story that create another obstacle. So back to the question practically though, is that I choose certain reflections in between meditation periods. In my meditation period, I am observing body, mind, and breath. Body, mind, and breath also includes the phenomena that's happening in my environment, because that basically is via the body and goes into mind, like sounds or sensations or things like that. That's the meditation time. But around the meditation time, I'm still involved in Dharma practice. Our Dharma practice cannot be limited to meditation time. That is not enough. Yeah, I'm telling you, really, telling all of you, like, we need to do more than sit. There's the reflections, there's Dharma teachings, there's coming back and pausing and stopping and creating certain intentions throughout your day. Yeah. Of gratitude and appreciation, of recognizing the universality of dukkha and the suffering of others as equal to the suffering of self, of wanting to awaken a bit of care, of really working at empathy. What is this person feeling really? Where are they struggling and where is their pain? How is it like pain that I've experienced so that I can understand it? Even if it's just like in my imagination of doing this. But it's an essential attitude and approach to start awakening that empathy and compassion so that self and other are not so separate. So yeah, we have to stop during the day when we notice that we are retreating, withdrawing into like old self-centered habits of mind, observing that and accepting it, and then making a conscious choice to consider others more than self. And you can do it at like any time. Every time everybody reads the news, do you read the news with a sense of, wow, compassion, empathy, care? So that bad news is actually helping your practice. The more difficult news, the more you have opportunity to consider empathy. Can that happen? Can that be part of your practice? So that reading the newspaper every day is part of your Dharma practice. Listening to Dharma talks, or considering qualities each week that you want to develop: patience and generosity and energy, motivation, the paramitas, equanimity and compassion, joy for others, so that I feel empathy for their pain, but I also am joyful for their successes. These don't just happen by exposing ourselves to the teachings. You hear a teaching, it doesn't just happen. At first, it sounds like a good idea. Hopefully, it does that, even that. But then we start to, explore them as a practice that we do. Practice means repetition, and repetition needs to happen daily. And it doesn't mean you're doing it all at once, but you may take one quality a week. Like this week, it's gratitude. Next week, it's sympathetic joy. Week after that, I'm going to be focused on concentration more. I notice when I'm not concentrated. livelihood, I'm going to notice how when I'm doing work at home, it's a lot more hard to keep, focused and stuff. So right livelihood, am I bringing the Dharma into my work when I'm on the computer? There's a lot of ways to chip away at selfishness and expand and open up to, connection. Is that all register?
Yes, thanks.
Now, I just want to say, like, I talk a lot about patience, and that's one of the paramitas. There's dana and there's patience. But we have to remember that after patience, there's morality and virya, which is energy, motivation. If you just said patience, be like, yeah, Shanti, I got all the time in the world. But, that energy is saying, and this is an emergency. Like, I gotta work now. So they strike a good balance. If I just said energy, I'd burn myself out and get stressed. But if I just said patience, I'd be like, I'll get around to it. So, try to find in every quality you're developing, try to find the middle way of it. So too much gratitude starts to be a bit artificial, and not really like focused. Too little means we're like not appreciating this opportunity. So yeah, find your balance. So let's take a minute and finish up tonight. So breathing in, I accept where I am now. Breathing out, I relax. I appreciate and I observe this moment as it is experienced in my breath, in my body, and in my mind. And with a compassionate attitude, I wish to live such a way that my life and practice will help benefit others, so they too may bear the fruit of their practice. Not of suffering in the world, each person and each sentient being, each animal, person that we share this planet with, their suffering will decrease and their enlightenment will blossom. May it be so.